that we had to deal out. So, welcome to the JCI Kootenay All Candidates Forum for the 2020 BC Provincial Election, Kootenay East riding. My name is Derek Penson, and I am the 2020 JCI Kootenay President. And we'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land which we are gathered here on today is traditional unceded territory of the Ktunaxa and Kimbasket peoples. So a little bit about what JCI Kootenay is we're a group of young people aged 18 to 40 who live and work in the East Kootenay. Our members believe in the importance of creating positive change within our communities and the world. To help accomplish this, we value improving ourselves and enjoy fellowship with other like-minded individuals. I'd like to start by thanking the candidates for coming out for tonight's event, and then everyone who submitted questions for tonight's event, and especially for Artistic Media Productions for taping and broadcasting this forum. We couldn't have done it without you guys. And please welcome tonight's moderator, Bruce Seitz.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Seitz, and it's my privilege to moderate this evening's event, the All-Candidate Forum for the 2020 British Columbia Provincial Election. I would like to thank JCI and Artistic Media Productions for hosting and live streaming the event. Thank you to the Cranbrook Chamber of Commerce for providing the venue, and Blue Lake Camp for providing the space for overflow. To start with, I'm going to go quickly over the rules for this evening's debate. The first part of the evening's debate starts with the candidates taking 3 minutes to introduce themselves and their platform. The order by which they will introduce themselves has been predetermined by a draw of a number. The second and the main part of this evening's event is the question and debate period. The questions have been collected via email and social media and have been sorted prior to this event. There are 25 questions in this bowl, and I will randomly choose a question to ask each candidate. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer the question. The other candidates will be given an opportunity for a 2-minute rebuttal, and we're allowing 3 or 4 rebuttals per candidate. To wrap up this evening's event, we'll give each candidate 2 minutes for their closing remarks. So without any further ado, I say we get down to it. To start off this evening's event, I will ask Mr. Wayne Stetsky of the NDP party to please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Wayne Stetsky, and I want to work with you and for you as your MLA for Kootenay East. I'm running because I have a passion for helping people in a non-partisan way. I still get people coming to me for help, and I have a strong desire to make a better BC. When you bring a problem to your MLA, you should never have to hear, "My hands are tied," or "It's out of my hands." I promise you a better result when I'm your MLA. Communicating with you is my priority, and you can count on me to be in your community with an invitation to come for coffee or go on a hike or a mountain bike ride together. I'm also running so that you will have an MLA working for you inside government. John Horgan will be re-elected as Premier, and I want to be your strong voice on John's team. My wife Audrey and I have lived here for 30 years. We're so fortunate to have raised our family in a world-class place like Kootenay East. During those 3 decades, I have served you as Member of Parliament, Mayor of Cranbrook, Manager of the East Kootenay Conservation Program, and Regional Manager for the Kootenays for the Ministry of Environment, responsible for fish, wildlife, ecosystems, and parks. Caring about the environment is a big part of who we are here in Kootenay East, and has been a focus for my entire life. I believe in giving back to my community and have volunteered locally on 11 different nonprofit boards and committees, and have served as a manager coach for minor hockey and minor ball, helping your children stay healthy while learning the importance of teamwork. We are facing a number of challenges that we must continue to work on together: a pandemic and a shortage of family doctors, small businesses struggling, building up our wildlife populations, securing infrastructure dollars for schools, implementing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and fighting climate change. You need an MLA that you know will work with you and for you in meeting these challenges. It's important not to forget what past governments were like. In April of 2017, the Tyee put out a report on Christy Clark and Gordon Campbell's 15 years of governing BC called 117 BC Liberal Falsehoods, Boondoggles, and Scandals, the complete list, something Liberal governments seem to have a special penchant for. Premier John Horgan has worked hard to earn your respect over the last 3 years. He is one of the most highly rated premiers in Canada. I am passionate about helping you and our communities, and I'm looking forward to working with John Horgan and with you as your MLA for Kootenay East. Thank you for your support and your vote in this very important election.
Thank you, Wayne. Up next is BC Liberal incumbent MLA Tom Spitka.
Thank you, Bruce. Hello, my name is Tom Spitka, and I'm proud to be YouTubing to you on the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa First Nation. I've been very honored to be your representative for the past 4 years as your MLA. Before this honor, I was a self-employed business person for close to 30 years that also sat as a Cranbrook City Councillor and a director for the RDK and also for the hospital board. I am part of 5 generations that have called Kootenay East home. Lifestyle is what is important to me. I have a young growing family with my beautiful wife Carrie, as well as an adult son who is happily married, which has given me my first grandchild, who I'm very proud of. Living here in Kootenay East means working hard and playing even harder. We have the most beautiful region in BC that offers us 365 days a year recreation. We need access to these areas, or we might as well just move back to the big cities, and I know all of you out there, that's not an option we want. Of course, it is our diverse economy that keeps us grounded here with high-paid and high-skilled jobs in mining, forestry, agriculture, as well as our newer identity as a destination place for the world to come and enjoy. We have done a good job so far, but we have lots of work ahead of us. Access to health care, senior care, homelessness, wildlife, land access, and child care are but a few, not to mention getting our economy back up and rolling. Almost 1.2 million British Columbians were forced to rely on federal COVID-19 benefits because they were unable to work, and the NDP has no plan to bring jobs back to BC. Now it's time for action, not just promises. BC has gone from the lowest unemployment to the fourth worst. The NDP have called an unnecessary election that wasn't due for over a year in a time when we were trying to navigate a new school year with COVID, and tourism and hospitality businesses are needing relief after not making ends meet during what was supposed to be their high season. 1.5 billion, oh, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thanks.
Up next, I would like to introduce Carrie Wall of the BC Green Party.
2 minutes.
Thank you, JCI, for this opportunity. I'm humbled to be here as an uninvited settler on the traditional and ancestral Amakas Ktunaxa. I've been employed by Interior Health for the last 10 years, partnering with local governments and community leaders to develop healthy public policies and plans. For the 15 years before that, I worked in family services and also as a mental health and substance use clinician. My whole career has been dedicated to public health best practices and improving the lives of those who live in British Columbia now and all those yet to come and yet to be born. Working in non-partisan environments like local government and healthcare is very satisfying because they focus on collaboration and really meeting the needs of citizens. I find this kind of meaningful collective action really in line with my vision and the BC Greens vision for good governance. All health professionals, including me, need to work with whomever is in the government. As a member of the Columbia Basin Trust Social Advisory Committee, as a member of TEC's Elk Valley and Crow's Nest Pass Communities of Interest Advisory Committee, and as a member of the BC Government Employees Union, I happily cooperate with whomever's in the legislature. I can confidently state that it's scientific evidence, local data, and local expertise that needs to guide the decisions we make here in the Kootenay East and decisions that we want to make for the provincial government. Lawmaking that is done in an atmosphere of competition and domination is, quite honestly, an old-fashioned style of politics and one that regular people are sick of. I decided to run as an MLA candidate with the BC Greens out of frustration. Frustration with the lack of housing, lack of respect towards Indigenous peoples, lack of attention to the climate crisis, and lack of attention to the overdose crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. May I ask, was Tom given 2 minutes, or was he given the... Everyone was given 2 minutes there? Okay.
The only
Thank
problem
you.
is we were told 3.
We were told 3, it says
Yeah.
right here.
I see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Did you finish yours?
Could I have my last minute?
Yes, I'm going to allow the last minute of that because we were instructed for 3 minutes. So please
All right.
finish up, Tom.
Thanks, Bruce. What I was going to say at the end was there was $1.5 billion that were earmarked for economic relief that should have gone out in July, and we're still waiting on government direction. Meanwhile, parents, teachers, students, and the general public are not feeling safe. That's why this election is unnecessary. Yet during the second wave of the pandemic, when we need government the most, government has abandoned us and has been dissolved, so the NDP can take advantage of a risky time to get some votes. But to be positive, this is an opportunity. The BC Liberals have rolled out a plan that will be one of the strongest rollouts in BC history, with an incredible $30.9 billion infrastructure project, including the building of hospitals, schools, and highways, with billions more going into healthcare, seniors and long-term care, mental health and addiction, and ending the ICBC monopoly. I look forward to the debate.
Thank you, Tom. Carrie,
Thanks, I appreciate that. I do want to finish up.
please.
I wanted to say that I decided to run as an MLA candidate with the BC Greens out of frustration. Frustration about the lack of housing, frustration about the lack of respect towards Indigenous peoples on their unceded territories, frustration about the lack of attention to the climate emergency, and frustration about the lack of solutions to the overdose emergency. I have been working around the Kootenays for years on issues related to housing, childcare, and food security, among others. But local governments and community groups often can't get the solutions they need because there are barriers that exist at higher levels of government. So we are sitting here in an overdose crisis, a nation-to-nation crisis with Indigenous peoples, a climate crisis, a housing crisis, and now we've got a pandemic, which of course is a crisis on its own, but has brought with it an economic crisis. This is a time for profoundly bold action. The BC Greens stand for collaboration, evidence-based decision-making, and holding government accountable. Skills I am practiced at, and skills we need a lot more in the provincial government. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, so the second part of this evening is the debate period. The first question will be presented to Wayne, and Tom and Carrie will be given the opportunity for a rebuttal. So the first, to answer the question, you have 3 minutes to answer the question, and we'll keep the rebuttals to about 2 minutes here. So the first question, we looks like we got a nice long one here. So Wayne, what is your party's plan to deal with our big game wildlife population decline? For example, the elk, sheep, and deer. 30 years ago, we were told that the southern caribou were in trouble, and 5 different governments later there are no caribou left. Will we ever have a high fence on our major highways the way the national parks did, with 99% success rate on preventing animal collisions?
Yeah, thank you. As the former regional manager responsible for wildlife for the Kootenays, this is something that is near and dear to my heart. We absolutely need to rebuild wildlife populations. They're about half of what they were when I was regional manager. There are a number of things that need to happen to do that. We need to make sure that ungulate winter ranges are in decent shape. There's a lot of invasive weeds happening. I think we need a program to potentially buy back wildlife exclusion fencing in key crossing areas. We need to look at the predator population, make sure that it's in balance where it should be. We also need to have long-term funding for wildlife, and I really like some of the proposals that have come forward recently to set aside in a special fund or foundation money that comes from anything to do with wildlife. So licenses, when there's resource developments potentially, there could be money going into a special fund. So we have a lot of work to do. In terms of the caribou populations, they were still there when I was regional manager. Very sad that a couple of them have winked out over the last year or two. In order to have caribou, of course, you need to have healthy habitat. You need to have old-growth forests. You need to have areas where they feel protected. So when you look around the province, we need to look at where the caribou herds are still healthy, and we need to focus on making sure that they stay healthy in those parts of British Columbia. But we do have work to do around wildlife, and I'm very anxious to get to work and to rebuild those populations back to where they were when I was the regional manager for the Kootenays.
All right, thank you, Wayne. Tom, please, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to make a real rebuttal to Mr. Setsky's comments. He touched on some good things, of course, habitat restoration, ecosystem restoration, funding needs to be done. It's been flatlined for close to 40 years, so all governments are responsible for this. One thing Mr. Setsky avoids to say is predator control. We have examples in our Kootenay National Park, our Glacier National Park, where there's no access, no hunting, no ungulates, but lots of predators. So it's part of the management. We manage our prey. We should also be managing our predators. As far as caribou recovery goes, we're seeing different ideas being tried up in the northeast corner of the province with zero consultation with local stakeholders, local hunting groups, on a lot of backdoor closed deals on how we're going to recover those caribou herds. An alternate prey management is what they are pushing right now, which is essentially increasing license and tags on moose so that in order to starve the predators, so to save the caribou. It's been tried a long time ago. It doesn't work, and we need to be a little bit more realistic on doing more science-based decision-making rather than emotional-based decision-making. We also need regional representation at the board. It's not a one-size-fits-all in British Columbia. We're very diverse. We have lots of ecosystems, and so our local stakeholders, our local hunting groups, our local trappers, guide outfitters, they should be the ones at the table. Instead of special interest groups that seem to be always getting in there and telling us what we should be doing and what we should not be doing. So those are the three things: a funding model, regional representation, and science-based approach to wildlife. And those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Carrie, you have asked to rebuttal as well, so please go ahead.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate that. I do have a brief rebuttal. I appreciate this question. It's super important, and I'm really glad to hear the wise words from my colleagues Tom Spitka and Wayne Setsky. I would like to add that there's this interlocking related piece to this question related to resource development, climate change, and human impacts on the forests and the watersheds. I know this was mentioned before. We do need to take a science-based approach, as Tom mentioned. We've got local experts here like WildSight that have been doing data collecting for years. I took part a couple years ago in the Elk Valley Grizzly Bear Project, tracking grizzly movements through the Elk Valley. It's imperative that we have data. It's imperative we understand how we're all interlinked with the forests and the watersheds, and human development is number one the thing that is putting wildlife at risk. So as long as we're pushing forward different kinds of roads and pipelines and forestry projects, we can't be forgetting about the caribou and the wildlife and really the watersheds that we all depend on.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, my next question is for Tom. How do you propose to make improvements to long-term care homes in the Kootenays?
Well, thanks, Bruce. That's a really good question, something that I've been on for ever since I've been elected as MLA. We have a discrepancy between private care facilities and public care facilities. It's two different types of management based styles that work with those facilities. The BC government has rolled out a very comprehensive plan. It's a $1 billion over 5-year plan that upgrades long-term care facilities, also keeps seniors in their homes longer. Our seniors want to stay home longer. That's where their support lies. They feel comfortable there, and we want to make every attempt possible to keep them there longer, so that when they do need a long-term care facility, that's where it is, and that those will be upgraded, as I said. As part of this massive investment in new facilities, we will work towards ensuring that every senior in long-term care who wants a private room has one. We will make it affordable for seniors to age safely and comfort in their own homes by implementing a new tax credit for seniors up to $7,000 a year for the cost of their home care. So that could be up to $20,000 worth of amenities, such as somebody coming in and shoveling their walk, or retrofitting their home to make it more compatible for their disabilities if they have one. Lots of things that can be, shovel their walk, somebody coming in to cook a meal. All these things will make the seniors more safer in their homes. And this is something that the BC Liberals are very keenly aware of, and I think it's something that's well deserved. Our seniors have served us well over the years. It's time that we pay them back. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Both of you have asked to rebuttal, so I'll just ask that you keep them concise and to the point. And go ahead, Carrie.
Thank you, Bruce. I would like to say a little bit more directly, speak to the question about long-term care and what's needed there. That was the first platform piece that came out from the BC Greens right after the election was announced about long-term care specifically. And we need to end the practice of private companies profiting off the care of our elderly. Our elderly are just as important as our children, and of course we have a child care and families platform as well. If we're lucky, we will all be elderly. It's not somebody else's problem. This is a problem for our families, and it touches ourselves. A lot of it relates to how much care workers are paid. They are vastly underpaid in this province. The vast majority of care work happens by women, most often women who are racialized or come from outside of the country, and who are mothers. They are usually not making living wages, and when private care homes are when it's in a private care home, which is designed for profits, wages are the first thing to go. When we value our human life and our elders, as we should, it's 2020, we will pay for proper care, and that might mean unionizing, which of course I would be for as a union member. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Wayne, please.
So when the Liberals were in government, they changed laws to allow privatization and cuts to seniors' homes. The Seniors Advocate found that 9 in 10 care homes were not adequately staffed under the BC Liberals. They underpaid staff who were forced to work in multiple facilities, and that led to the spread of COVID in the last 6 to 7 months. So what the NDP government are doing is fixing understaffing. They're hiring 7,000 new workers in long-term care and assisted living, and at multi-facility staffing that was spreading COVID between seniors' homes. Repealed BC Liberal laws that allowed contracts to be flipped and caused constant staff turnover. And they're building new public long-term care homes. And here in the Kootenays, we need to make sure that we're expanding the Better at Home program, which keeps seniors in their houses longer. And I'm very happy to see that the paramedics are now visiting seniors as well. We need to expand that program as well to make sure that our seniors are kept safe. They're the ones that built this great country. They deserve our respect. They deserve more funding, and they deserve sustainable funding going forward.
Great. Thank you, Wayne. Carrie, the next question is for you. What actions will you take to ensure our province is resilient moving forward and enacts policies critical to the health of our ecosystem? How would you help our resource industry communities transition to find sustainable economic futures?
Thank you for the question, Bruce. So this is about community resilience and resource. I'm sorry, did I get that right?
I'll read it one more time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a bit wordy here. What actions will you take to ensure our province is resilient moving forward and enacts policies critical to the health of our ecosystem? How would you help our resource industry communities transition to find sustainable economic futures?
Thank you very much. That was a complex question. There's
Yes.
a lot it touched on, which I appreciate because the questioner is thinking big. So I think this idea about transitioning resource workers for resiliency is definitely on the right track, something the BC Greens certainly have in mind. We understand that the demand for things like oil and gas has been decreasing. We also know that rates of automation in these industries is increasing. And a real consequence of this is that people could be out of jobs. Now, jobs are the major way we have right now for people to gain an income, and everybody needs an income to meet their daily needs. This is what we talk about in health as the social determinants of health. Everybody needs money for a home, food, education, etc. So, people have jobs. If they're losing their opportunity for jobs out of the resource industry, the BC Greens plans to job training, transitioning into more resource technologies. As well, the Greens have always encouraged different levels of government to really consider a guaranteed basic income. So when there may be times of unemployment or transitions between employment, we need workers to have enough money to meet their daily needs and to meet the needs of families. I did talk about ecosystem health a little bit earlier, which I know was also touched on in that question. Maybe I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Gentlemen, would you like to rebuttal? Thank you, Wayne.
So we have wonderful industries here in Kootenay East, of course, with the Elk Valley coal mines, the logging that we have. We have a great tourism industry. Looking forward, though, we certainly do need to transition to a greener economy, and that ultimately will result in lots of jobs. And when I say that, a green economy really is not more electric vehicles and making sure that we have electric charging stations. Excuse me. It means focusing on other kinds of jobs that can be done from home. So we need high-speed internet so that people can work out of their own homes. It reduces commuting impact on ecosystems and the environment. But, where we are today, we have one of the nicest places in the world to live. That is because ecosystems have been important. Again, when I was regional manager with Ministry of Environment, I had an ecosystems section, and their job was to work with industry to make sure that those industries were as environmentally friendly as possible. And I do think that's a role that government should have to continue to work with industry and ensuring both healthy industries and healthy ecosystems going forward.
Great, thank you, Wayne. For this next round here, I'm going to ask that we just cut it down to 2 minutes in the spirit of keeping on time here, and we'll keep our rebuttals to 1 minute so that we can ask some more questions and have some more responses. Wayne, I'm going to try to get to the bottom here and find one for you. That one looks good. Next one here is for you here, Wayne. The city of Cranbrook has recently deferred the urban deer problem to the provincial government to deal with. How do you propose that the municipalities here and further afield deal with their urban deer population?
Well, an interesting question, because I was both regional manager responsible for wildlife and mayor of Cranbrook dealing with some of the issues that we have. I have a lot of empathy for municipalities that say that the province should take a lead in terms of dealing with urban deer. And the reason for that is that, again, when you're regional manager for wildlife, you make a point of ensuring everybody understands that wildlife belongs to the province. So when it became a municipal problem, it put a lot of extra stress on taxpayers, and both from a psychological, a sociological, and a economic basis. So I think the problem should go back to the province and let them figure it out. Personally, I was supportive of translocating deer, and I still am if we can find appropriate locations and make it work. But it is a long-term issue. Again, some people love deer. When I was mayor, I had people on the phone crying about the removal of deer, and I had people on the phone furious that we weren't removing every deer. So it's a very emotional problem, but I do think the province needs to take a stronger role in the future.
Thank you, Wayne. Chance for a rebuttal?
Yeah.
Very well. All right. Tom, I'm also going to go to the bottom here and see what I can find for you. Oh, got a nice long one here. The BC government has implemented the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and in this time of reconciliation with our Indigenous people, what are your plans to further this reconciliation and bring the standard of living of our Indigenous brothers and sisters in line with the rest of British Columbia?
Thanks, Bruce. Great question. It's all about partnerships. It's all about reconciliation, as you mentioned. The United Nation Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, as most people call UNDRIP, was a great policy to implement on the spirit of the declaration itself. As far as bringing opportunity to First Nation communities, we can start with some of our industries and our natural resource industries in British Columbia. Trans Mountain, LNG Canada, these are great examples of how we're bringing partnerships to First Nations. We are having avid discussions and collaborative efforts to bring online First Nation peoples in British Columbia, to be inclusive, to partner up with the province, to bring some of these projects into their own communities. There are some communities up in the north of the province, and all over the province for that matter, that have as high as 80% unemployment. They have terrible situations with homelessness and drug addiction, and it's just not a pretty picture in some of these communities. Some of these communities that have been touched and have found the ways to be partners with government, a government-to-government relationship, has been outstanding. Some of these communities have been turned around in a second over the opportunities that they've had. So continuing those conversations, continuing those partnerships with some of our natural resource industries is one of the big ways that we can bring opportunities to Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities throughout British Columbia. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, Carrie has asked first, and then Wayne, you can follow up with a 1-minute rebuttal, please.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think that the BC passing the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act unanimously in the legislature almost a year ago was one of the best things that the province has done. I was really thrilled that my MLA was there and took part in that. I do think we need to remember that almost all of British Columbia is unceded territory. We don't really have, except for top right corner, Treaty 8 territory,
Treaty 8, yeah.
We don't really have historical treaties here in British Columbia. And so when Tom Spitka uses phrases like, we turned that community around in a second, or we made a real success, to me this has a bit of a colonial overtone. It's not for us to decide what they need, or what's good for them, or what will work for them, or what First Nations communities will define as success or health. A number of years ago, the First Nations Health Authority was born, its own health authority looking after First Nations people. That, to me, is working well because they say it's working well.
Thank you, Carrie.
I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Wayne, 1 minute, please.
So it's a real honor to be sitting here today on the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa people. And I've worked with the Ktunaxa people for almost the full 30 years that I've been here in various capacities. I had memorandums of cooperation with them around managing provincial parks, around managing fish and wildlife. As mayor of Cranbrook, I participated for 3 years in the treaty negotiations between the federal provincial governments and the Ktunaxa, and I truly believe that treaties need to be followed through on in the end. I think the certainty they provide for everybody is great. Provincially, of course, we were the first province to pass UNDRIP. And since then, the NDP have signed a long-term agreement to guarantee 25 years of revenue sharing, supported the revitalization of First Nations languages. There's a lot more to do. Most importantly, we need to actually implement what was passed as legislation by the NDP government, the only province in Canada to pass that legislation.
Thank you, Wayne. Carrie, the next question's for you. 2020 has seen an increased focus on promoting diversity of thought and appearance across many of our institutions we hold dear. In what ways would you and your party work to increase representation of those minority groups in those representation of those minority groups in those institutions?
Thank you. A lot of people don't know, but the Green Party is an international movement, and internationally it's guided by 6 principles, one of which is respect for diversity. And so we think about diversity every way we can, especially when it comes to policy. Now, I want to point out that when the NDP announced this very snap election, it didn't give really any of us time to put together the diverse slate of candidates that we were hoping for. So we do have 2 Indigenous people running for the BC Greens this year, but we are not happy with that whatsoever. So one of the things we'd like to see is better representation across our party. And it's not just in the ways that we think of diversity, like the color of your skin or where your ancestors are from. We need to really think about things like who are renters, because for the most part, people in the legislature own homes. We could think about things like, what did your parents do for a living? Where do you work? Are you a union member? Even women, we need to see more women in positions of authority and policymaking in the legislature. So definitely this is important to the BC Greens. One of the things we definitely want to do is engage diverse groups of all kinds. Racialized groups, Indigenous people, women, younger people, all kinds of underrepresented voices, and do what we can to support them, because our legislature is not representative of the diversity of our province. And in fact, by far, decision making and the decision makers are really a kind of elite. They're usually white, older, male, with money, time, and that's not the average case for our constituents. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. Yes, Wayne, 1 minute rebuttal, please.
Well, I agree with Carrie, but it needs to start at the top. And we're very proud as part of this election that over half of the NDP candidates are women. We have 5 Indigenous people running as candidates. We have LGBT party. It represents British Columbia very well. It's diverse. And I think if we start at the top by getting more elected officials representing the actual makeup of the province, the better the decision making will be in the end, and the more complete it will be. So we're well on our way with the NDP candidates that are running in this election.
Great. Thank you, Wayne. I believe we still have time for another row of questions, if you're okay with that. Okay. Maybe we'll just narrow the time down one more. We'll just keep it to a 1 minute kind of answer and then a quick 1 minute rebuttal. Okay. So Wayne, let's see what we can find for you here. As the saying goes, all politics is local. If elected the MLA for Kootenay East, how will you work to improve the lives of all the residents of our riding, regardless if they intend to vote for you or not? 1 minute.
1 minute.
Yeah, I'm going to give you 1 minute here.
Well, an excellent question. I think it starts by really caring about people and for people, and I've spent my entire life doing that. I've been a public servant my entire life. It starts by listening to people and being able to take their concerns and resolve them. And I had an excellent record of doing that as Member of Parliament, as many people out there will know. But it all starts by listening, meeting with your constituents, listening to them, understanding their issues, and then finding solutions. There are lots of issues we need to deal with. I'm really looking forward to spending time with all of the people in the riding going forward.
Great. Thank you, Wayne. Carrie, please go ahead.
Thanks. I could rebut that. I want to remind people that the BC NDP and the BC Liberals, sadly, they whip their votes in the legislature, which some people don't always know what that means, but it basically means members of the Legislative Assembly don't always get to vote or do what they want. You just have to look at Michelle Mangal for a sad example of that. She's the former Minister of Energy and Mines, who promised her constituents that when she was elected, she was never going to let Site C go forward. And of course, she was there for the announcement that the NDP was letting Site C go forward. So the NDP and the Liberals, they may say that they will perform in a nonpartisan way, but we have a lot of examples that that's just not the case. People need to remember the BC Greens are not like that.
Thank you. Yes, Tom, go ahead, please.
Well, I got to jump in on that one. I can honestly say I've never been whipped into a vote ever in my last 3.5 years at the legislature. What I can say, though, is as far as collaboration and being whipped into a vote, out of the, I don't know how many bills that came across the legislature floor, not once did the BC Greens vote for us. They always voted for the NDP. Once they sustained from their vote. So I'm not really believing a lot what I'm hearing from the Green candidate right now, because party politics does happen from time to time. There's no question about it. But I can tell you right now, I act for the best of the people of Kootenay East. I don't ask for anybody's voter's card when they come to the MLA office. Our staff is always there to help them 24 hours a day, whenever they want. We don't see color when people come into our office, and we're very proud of that.
Thank you, Tom. All right, the next question is for you. For you, Tom. You have 1 minute. How do you propose to make further water infrastructure improvements on Indian reservations that are in need?
Well, another great question as far as Indigenous communities is concerned. Water quality is important to all of us. We need to make sure that water quality is of high importance. It's what is important to us as humans. We need good quality water. We need good quality infrastructure. So we need to get a handle on making sure that all water quality is taken care of. We have to make sure that wells and infrastructure that goes to communities and Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities are well looked after. We see some of the horrors that down in the United States right now of some of the water quality issues there, and Canada's not immune to that. So ensuring proper infrastructure, the BC Liberals are rolling out a $30.9 billion 3-year plan on infrastructure such as water improvement to municipalities and also out to First Nation communities. So I'm looking forward to that. It's the biggest rollout in BC history as far as infrastructure goes, and we'll all benefit from it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Wayne?
Drinking water on reserves absolutely needs to be a priority. The federal government has been working on it, but they need to do a lot more. I've remained in contact with the Minister of Indigenous Services, and so I'm happy to pass on concerns locally. Just want to go back to nonpartisan voting just quickly. I was very proud of my record as Member of Parliament, where I voted differently from my party on a number of occasions. And I actually did a video that you can check out, and it's called Wayne's World, Not Always Party Time. My whip used to come to me and say, Wayne, how are you going to vote on this one? And I'm very proud of that record. We are here to represent our constituents first, including our Indigenous constituents, and I'll always do that.
Thank you, Wayne. Okay. Our final question of the evening will go to you, Carrie. Of course, a nice long one here for you. The Elk Valley is currently facing a shortage of spaces in schools and a shortage of teachers teaching on call. The province is also dealing with one of the lowest per student funding models in the country and a huge problem with specialist teacher ratios and large class sizes. How can you advocate for education from your position as an MLA for the Kootenay East riding?
Thank you. Schools are an essential service, just like healthcare. It's essential that we have teachers and schools and infrastructure ready to teach students. Students need it, parents need it, communities need it. So one of the first things we can do is work closer with the BC Teachers Federation. They are a powerful union. They know what they want, they know what they need, they're in the schools every day. And I fear that they've been really shut out by governments in the past. We need to work closer in collaboration to understand what they need and to meet those needs. School, of course, is not a business. Funding should not be shut down from schools, just like we need funding in healthcare. As I said earlier, they're essential services. So I think working with communities, community leaders, local governments, and again, teachers' unions and other related unions is the key.
Thank you, Carrie. Wayne, 1 minute, please.
So we'll all remember that under the Liberal government, they actually took teachers to court to try and increase class sizes, and they lost. And since then, the Horgan government has hired 4,200 new teachers, so they have the smallest class sizes in a decade. Here in the Kootenays, we have 2 infrastructure priorities for schools. The kids coming out of Emily Dickens School in Fernie need a new middle school to go to. There are 10 portables currently at Emily Dickens, so we need to build a new middle school in Fernie. And of course, here in Cranbrook, we need to renovate or replace Mount Baker Senior Secondary School. It's been on the list for a long time. So those are 2 priorities that I'm going to work on and make happen.
The school is called Isabella Dickens.
What's that?
It's Isabella Dickens School.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Isabella Dickens.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
1 minute.
Thanks. I'll chime in on that one. We've seen the NDP when they first campaigned 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago, how long it's been now, on removing portables from schools in British Columbia. Isabel Dickens actually has one of the distinctions, not a very good distinction, of being has the highest amount of portables of any school in BC, 8, and they just added a 9th. This has been dragged and kicked down the road for 3 years now. Broken promises by the NDP. The COVID response to teachers, my Green colleague over here mentioned that they haven't been listened to enough, and they haven't under the NDP government and the COVID response. They wanted a consistent plan throughout British Columbia, and they've got 60 different school districts in BC, and they've got 60 different plans. And teachers aren't feeling safe right now, and neither are students and neither are teachers or parents. So we've seen all kinds of outbreaks here now in different schools across the province, and we need to get a handle on that. Great,
thank you. Well, I wish we had at least another hour so I can finish this bowl of questions, but that has we have come to the end of our time here with you.